Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys just a little bit about relative strength and body weight ratios and things like that some people try to use, and a lot of people who aren't really involved in the strength world at all don't really understand why there's problems with some of this, and I want to explain it very briefly. And I was reminded of that again when someone asked me in the video comments yesterday, what do I consider to be for a drug-free recreational lifter to be a good strength standard? What should they shoot for to be considered, decently strong and have a real good strength base over the course of their training life? And I had said, sorry, Khaleesi's over here meowing. Okay, Khaleesi, what are you doing? We'll jump up there and play with Aries. But I had said that getting to, something like a 400 squat, 300 bench press, 500 deadlift is a good lifetime goal. And the person said, yeah, but shouldn't you consider body weight in that? And I replied back, no, unless you're really short. Because here's the thing. If you're really short, you're obviously going to be limited on the amount of body weight you can gain without using a bunch of drugs or getting fat. If someone is 5'3" or 5'4", they're just not going to be 190 pounds lean, relatively lean, without a shitload of drugs. They're not casual at that point. But for average height people, you have to look at it this way. If you're concerned about body weight, then you haven't been training that long, or haven't focused on gaining muscle mass, and you haven't focused on gaining strength. Because if someone is average height, let's say they're 5'8", 5'9", that's fairly average for at least Western males. That's average. And you started at 150 pounds, decently lean. Let's say you were just at average healthy body fat at 150, which is reasonable. That's the average 150 pound guy at 5'8", 5'9". You gained 20 pounds of muscle in your first year from all your noob gains. Over the next 2 years, you put on another 10 pounds. So even if you had the same amount of fat and you gained 30 pounds of muscle over your first 3 years, exhausted all those noob gains, most of them intermediate gains, because you trained fairly hard, even as a casual lifter, 3 days a week, and you made those gains. You're going to be 180 pounds at a lower body fat percentage than where you started. Your body fat's going to go down about 4 or 5% because of the muscle gain and change in body weight, and you'll be up to 180 pounds. If a person didn't get to 180 pounds, they intentionally stayed at a lower body weight. They didn't focus on gaining muscle. They didn't focus on gaining strength. So therefore, if you didn't focus on doing any of these things, why would you care about your relative strength? Why would you care about how strong you are? And it's pretty obvious that you didn't set the goal of being strong, so you're not going to be strong. I'm assuming when I make a standard that someone actually spent several years trying to achieve that goal. Just like with my novice program, I'm under the assumption that the person really wanted to make gains really good in that first year. So that's what I set as reasonable standards for someone who actually put forth the effort and wanted to reach that goal. Not saying they had to make it their life, but they put forth the effort, and that's what strength standards should reflect. It shouldn't reflect someone who didn't try to reach that goal at all. It's for someone who actually worked and said, if I want to get stronger, I should probably eat a little more food. I should eat enough to gain weight. I shouldn't be 140 or 150 pounds if I'm average height if I want to get really strong. And the exception is the smaller guys, and that's why we have, really, that's the reason we even have weight classes for the most part in most strength sports, is because of various heights, because everyone is going to gain muscle as they gain strength. They're going to get bigger. Shorter guys, if they had to go for absolute strength, will never carry the mass, the total size, and therefore the total strength that the bigger guys will. And that's why we have things like Wilks scores and weight classes. And the reason we don't use body weight ratios, and that's the other thing. People say, why don't you ever use, with strength standards, body weight ratios? And here's why. Body weight ratios favor people who do not try to gain muscle or size or body weight. They favor you. Because you will find that the top lifters in virtually any strength sport in the different weight classes, their body weight ratios to strength go down as the weight classes go up. We don't use that. That's why we use Wilks scores, which works off a coefficient to determine that. And the reason is basic physics, that the smaller a creature is, the easier it is for them to lift relative strength. And the most extreme example that you normally see is like the ant. The ant can lift literally dozens and dozens of times its own body weight with ease because of its size. Whereas then you take a larger animal like an elephant and it simply can't produce those strength to weight ratios. And we know that based upon there's physics that explain all of that. And it's the same in humans. The smaller guys with the same amount of training and style of training tend to be able to lift more relative to their body weight than the bigger guys who may be lifting more total weight. So that's why the ratios go out the window, because if you want to hit the best body weight to strength ratios, you should really focus on training for strength without gaining any body weight. So you would intentionally stay at 140 or 150 pounds. And here's the kicker one. A lot of times, a lot of us give out strength standards. The shorter guys who are exceptional still reach those strength standards. Those numbers that I just gave out, my friend John East is closing in on those numbers now as a drug-free competitive powerlifter. Now, he is competing at a pretty serious level now, but he weighs 146 pounds. He's 5'4". Guy deadlifts over 500 pounds. He is almost at a 400-pound raw no wrap squat, and he just bench pressed 122 kilos the other day, which is up to about 270 pounds. He's been training for 5 years, no drugs, but he weighs 146, and even he is getting close to those numbers that I gave for what an average height guy at a higher body weight should be able to reach eventually, given a few years of hard work. So again, what you'll find is that sometimes even basic strength standards, even the shorter guys who cannot hold as much body weight can still, oftentimes, if they put in enough years of ass-busting hard work, can still oftentimes reach those basic numbers. So they're not unrealistic, they're just more geared towards people in the average. And if you're really tall, those numbers are way easier to reach because you can hold more body mass and more muscle. So remember, guys, there are issues with relative strength. There are issues with strength to weight ratios of using those, and people trying to talk about body weight. Well, again, if you're at a lower body weight and your average height, you simply haven't put in enough years or enough effort. You shouldn't be going, I'm really strong for my body weight, unless you've intentionally dieted down for a weight class for competitive purposes. It's not that big of a deal. It simply means oftentimes that you haven't put in the years to put on a large enough amount of muscle mass. Because at the end of the day, people forget strength is still strength. Deadlifting 800 pounds is still deadlifting 800 pounds, irrespective of what you weigh when you do it. That is still strong. And there will always be a debate in the strength world over the relative strength versus absolute strength. Alright guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time. But let me give you guys a bicep shot before I go.